Hey, it's Matty Heimgartner, and today I want to read you my memoir essay, After. You can find it in my collection of memoir essays called Self Portraits. I matched with a handsome hippie dude on Tinder last week who lives 30 miles southwest of me, Santa Cruz. He super liked me, which essentially let me know that he was interested before I made my decision. The like, super like, and dismiss icons are so close together that it is a running joke within the app that super likes are often mistakes. As an icebreaker, I asked him if that was the case. I am always cautious with my optimism when it comes to men. He told me the super like was intentional. He said I was perfect and that I was looking for the same thing he was looking for. Although it felt rather soon for him to be throwing the P word around, I was interested. After 20 or so minutes of undisrupted messages, the conversation shifted. "Oh," he typed. "I just read the last paragraph in your bio. Every time I make a new profile, I add a disclaimer that I am sober. I am proud to be sober, but I also understand that it could be a deal breaker. It is rare for a dude to outwardly acknowledge it as such. Instead, what I usually get is an impromptu confession about them telling me that they think they might have an addiction problem, but are not ready to take care of it. He told me he doesn't drink, but he is a big stoner. His words, not mine. I can groove with stoners who talk about alien life forms in galaxies far away, and mutant sea animals that will someday evolve to walk on land. What I cannot deal with is someone who is frequently worshipping the porcelain gods between heartfelt confessions that they won't even remember in the morning. The hippie dude gave me his Instagram handle, and I lurked his page without telling him mine. I was hyper aware that my most recent post was a minute-long short film about sobriety. Although proud of the video, I knew that it could work against me, considering he was already doubting the disconnect. After scrolling through his feed, I realized he was more of a lifestyle stoner than an opportunistic one, flexing his garden full of fresh herbs. It was clear that our lives would not mesh well. I went back to Tinder and promptly deactivated my account. I guess I ghosted him. But if there is no trace of the messages, maybe he will think he imagined the whole interaction. I thought about the exchange when I sat in traffic on Highway 17, heading towards Santa Cruz on a record hot January afternoon a week later. It was me, my large iced coffee, and the newest revision of my sad playlist on Spotify. The playlist is essentially a compilation of all my favorite breakup songs that have inspired my best creative work. My last breakup was in April, 21 months prior. I spent the following seasons creating a series of mixed media paintings about rediscovering myself as an individual after being part of a duo for more than 6 years. The series became an exhibit that was shown at the Castro Country Club in San Francisco. Although I had quite a bit of adjusting to do, creating that series helped mend my broken heart. Later in the process, when the heartache was not as easy to tune into, I curated a playlist of all the sad songs that reminded me of the good times I had to leave in the past. To keep the series consistent, I kept those memories on a loop with the playlist I made. I do have to be careful when I indulge because the songs can bring me too far down memory lane, passing inspiration and inducing a deep sadness. In a way, it's like when I used to smoke marijuana. One hit would allow me to join the conversation about alien life forms. 2 hits would allow me to quietly observe others during those conversations. 3 hits would land me in front of the bathroom mirror, watching my pupils pulsate with my overactive heartbeat. Moderation is key. About an hour and a half into my drive, I was at a standstill on an upward curve on 17. The overbearing California trees were abnormally brown for January, and I wondered if that was a premonition for another drought. Then I wondered what kind of trees I was looking at. I always wanted to be the free-spirited type of person who could immediately identify a tree or a flower. I bet that hippie dude from Tinder would have known. The first chord of Pink's I Don't Believe You broke my curious train of thought. Pink's 2008 album Funhouse, where the song appears, was her response to the highly publicized split from her husband Carey Hart. The album came out during my senior year of high school, just in time for my first breakup. Every time that I hear that song, I have flash visions of her haunting black and white music video featuring her as a ghost in her actual wedding dress, combined with memories of the night I drunkenly cheated on my high school boyfriend. The other guy and I were in our friend's bathroom during a Friday night party. My boyfriend was outside with all the other drunk teenagers. I don't remember him seeing us, but I do remember him crying in the stairwell afterward. I also remember all the partygoers coming inside the house to see what the fuss was. As I stood next to the other dude, I had to explain to the whole party that my boyfriend saw me kissing someone else with his pants around his ankles. During the promotional cycle of that album, Pink and Carey Hart worked out their problems and got back together. My boyfriend and I got back together for half a year before calling it quits on graduation night. My graduation night. He was older, but he was still working toward his diploma. I heard he is sober now too. The memory of my long-lost first love sent a sudden jolt of panic up from my racing heart through my throat to my brain as my foot sat heavy on the brake pedal. I was teetering that fine line between inspiration and deep sadness. I switched the stereo stores to CD and popped in Britney's Blackout. Although it was the darkest time in her life, this body of work is like Narcan for a bad anxiety trip. The deep house and electronic dance beats accompanied by sexy narratives help me escape my troubled mind. Britney has always provided me with a safety net when I feel excruciatingly lonely. As friends and lovers came in and out of my life, Britney was always a constant. She stuck around when others didn't. I had one short-term boyfriend between my two long-term boyfriends. He was, for lack of a better word, an asshole. I have a scar on my eyebrow that will never let me forget it. I was 20, lonely, and addicted to cocaine. He had a van that could take us to the dealer's house, and he was warm to the touch. My standards were set so low that those two simple things were enough for me. While we were dating, I had a tattoo of Britney Spears placed on my upper arm. I excitedly told him about it on his lunch break in the parking lot of his job, and he broke up with me. I was sad, of course, but by then I had other friends with cars who also liked cocaine, and his touch had grown cold. I later found out that I was not his only partner during that time. When I reflect on that relationship, I hardly recognize that version of myself. After 3 songs from Blackout, I changed the source back to my Spotify playlist. I was determined to find inspiration for a new series of paintings from there. The playlist is titled After. I named it to imply that I have transitioned into the next phase of life, after partying, after pretending, after the breakup. My baseline emotion is no longer sad, so I needed help getting there. As the car inched forward in short increments of gas, brake, Callum Scott's slowed-down cover of Robin's Dancing on My Own dripped through the speakers. Although I much prefer Robin's version of the song, Callum's ballad has a special place in my heart. The last 8 months of my most recent relationship was long distance because he moved out of state to pursue a master's degree in vocal performance. Those were the only 8 months of our 6.5-year relationship that we didn't live together. I had discovered Callum's album, and it was quite rare for me to listen to male singers. So I told my partner about the album, and we had mutually agreed that it was great. Although he was willing to listen to anything, we had very different music tastes. I kept him up to date with the contemporary pop stars and singer-songwriters, while he listened to classical music that he learned in school, like Bach and Antonio Vivaldi. During one of our nightly phone calls, I asked him what he thought of Callum Scott's album. His answer was so thorough and equipped with pop culture references that my gut told me his answer was outsourced. I know it sounds crazy, but that was the moment I knew there was someone else doing for him what I used to do. I did not confront him because I knew it would sound like paranoia. I also knew that he would not lie to me if I asked, and I wasn't ready for the truth. Instead, I lay awake on the bed he left behind, dwelling on the puzzle piece he didn't even know he gave me. Within a few weeks, we broke up. A few weeks after the breakup, he flew back to San Jose for a performance and stayed at my house. I was completely engulfed by the illusion that he would return and we would repair everything. But quite the opposite happened. He confirmed, face to face, that there was someone else. After his weekend visit, I decided I would give my all to my craft. Still riding the high of my first solo art exhibit, I wanted to maintain and grow my name as an artist. No drugs, no drinking, no boys, no distractions. I joined Alcoholics Anonymous and stepped up my gym game. Spotify's year-end Wrapped told me that Robin's Dancing on My Own was my top played song for the year we broke up. I always imagined myself singing it to him as I held my own lonely stare in the mirror of a crowded gym. It hurt too much to listen to Callum's version then, but it hurt just right to listen to Robin's. I turned my heartache into muscle. After the second hour of my 30-mile road trip, I finally discovered the culprit. 2 police cars were parked in the right-hand lane, and the officer stood near a fallen boulder. When I finally made my way past the boulder, the golden hour rays of sun shone through the brown trees. Are they redwoods? My plan to daydream on the beach was looking more distant than the beach itself. With only 10 miles left for Santa Cruz, I decided to see my adventure through. If nothing else, a sunset on the beach could help me write a poem and perhaps provide me with a cool picture for Instagram. I parked near a taco joint not far from Santa Cruz Wharf. The closer I got to the beach, the more populated the streets became. I kept my distance as I wove around families and groups of friends until I reached the ocean. I removed my shoes and socks and let the smallest end of the waves crash onto my toes. The ocean was absolutely freezing, and I forfeited the poetic walk along the water for a comfortable one on the warm sand. Once I reached the steps of the boardwalk, I sat down and pulled my travel diary out of my backpack. An empty page, no direction, no intention, only opportunities. I sketched a circle to fill about a quarter of the page. A circle was my default starting point and was most often the base for a head. I didn't drive all the way to Santa Cruz to draw a person that I could have drawn in my art studio. I erased the circle and looked at the ocean. I wanted to be mesmerized by its beauty, but the setting sun was burning my eyes. I squinted and held a hand up to cast a shadow over my face. The voices of hundreds of beachgoers interrupted the therapeutic sound of the waves. It wasn't romantic at all. My stomach gurgled to remind me that I hadn't eaten in hours. Frustrated, defeated, I closed the empty travel diary and pushed it into my backpack. I stood up and continued my walk along the sand. As I passed by the baby blue lifeguard tower, it offered me a memory from many moons ago. My brother, my 3 best friends, and I rode the bus up Highway 17 the summer before I turned 20. We eventually met up with a bigger group for a hotel party, but we had a few hours to kill beforehand. We made a bonfire on the beach, chugged 4 Locos, and danced around a boombox as we rotated Katy Perry's Teenage Dream and Eminem's Recovery. I'm not sure how we got away with that because the beach is closed at sunset. I remember laying down on the cold sand, looking up at the stars, feeling thankful to have those people in my life. That must have been before we finished our drinks because the story my brother tells is that I stripped and threw all my clothes in the fire as we danced and chanted around it. I have no memory of that, but I did wake up the next day in purple sweatpants with the $3 thrift store tag still attached. I smile at the memory. A memory is all that's left because my brother moved out of the state and I lost touch with those friends. As I rounded the corner of the sand along the boardwalk, I wondered if I will have any more carefree days like that in my future. Just before I exited the other end of the beach, I passed the sandbar where I had the worst trip of my life. I mistook my boyfriend for a dead cow as he laid completely still, covered in flies. A burst of paranoia convinced me that I had made up my sister, so when she called, I buried my iPhone in the sand and ran away. I lost my glasses and one shoe before falling asleep on a stranger's lawn in a puddle of my own piss. I didn't see my boyfriend again until I picked him up from jail the next morning. For 8 years, my life revolved around partying and getting high. When I finally recognized that I was taking it too far, I had to remove myself from that lifestyle. For the first year of my sobriety, I continued to throw big parties because I felt like I had to prove that I could still have a good time. Everyone else still drank, which didn't bother me because I thought of alcohol as an allergy, and my allergic reaction was blacking out and acting a fool. I did tell everyone ahead of time that if they do drugs, I didn't want to see it. Drugs are harder for me to say no to. During the last big party before the pandemic, I had a hybrid guest list of my old party friends and my new artist friends, and I even invited a friend from my new recovery group. By that point, I was questioning my motives. I remember wondering why I felt the need to invite so many people to a Friendsgiving. The friend from my recovery group, who showed up first and left last, relapsed at the party. Although his recovery was non-linear, I hated knowing that I had even a small part in giving him the opportunity to drink. I took that as a clear indicator that I had a choice between the past and the future, but I could no longer hold on to both. A few months later, the world shut down, and that was when the real healing began. I walked along the train tracks that hover above a lake that is only barely disconnected from the ocean. I walked along those tracks dozens of times before, but for the first time I found myself afraid of heights. I reflected on the fear as my heart raced below my shirt and realized that I had never walked across those tracks alone. Alone? I smiled. I felt my heartbeat slow down to a normal speed. For the first time all day, I found beauty in solitude. I did not have to explain my newly discovered fear of heights to anyone. Everything about the day trip was possible because I was alone. Had there been another man in the passenger seat, he would have looked up the cause for the slowdown. There would have been no mystery to the rock slide. Maybe he would have been annoyed with the traffic and requested that we turn around. Had there been another dude in the car with me, I would not have had the courage to sing along to every song at the top of my lungs, including when I listened to Melanie C's End of Everything, back to back to back to back. If there were another guy with me, I would have felt guilty reflecting on all 3 of my exes at different points of the day. Maybe alone isn't so bad after all. Maybe that's what I need. With only a whisper of daytime left, I walked along a jogging path back toward my car. I didn't take a single picture. I didn't write a poem. I didn't even conceptualize a painting. But I found inner peace. I stopped along the side of the path to pull out my water bottle, and as I tilted my head back, I noticed a green picnic bench and chairs peeking out from a garden that sat above the road. A chill ran down my spine. Years ago, During the same trip that I had burned all my clothes, my brother and I extended our vacation for an extra day while the rest of our friends went home. We had no money and no food, just booze and a bag of weed. I remember very few things from that day, but one memory was of a warlock with a long beard, a walking stick, and a silk robe who shared his pipe with us. I vividly remembered being on a green picnic bench in a garden. My brother always insisted I was crazy, and given my track record, it was easy to believe. A decade later, I finally found the picnic bench. Sometimes all it takes for you to find something is to stop looking. Thank you for your time.